Welcome to the Art Studio Insights podcast, where we demystify the creative process and exchange ideas with career-minded artists. We are your hosts, Adriana Amay and
Jackie Sanders. We are two emerging artists sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our journey. So if you are not already, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you will be notified when we launch a new episode every week. On today's episode, we are so excited because as the end of the year wraps up, inevitably all of us business owners, creatives, anyone that loves setting goals is thinking about the new year. So as we celebrate 2022 around the corner, we really wanted to take intentional time, not just to look back on the past year like we have in a previous episode, but also reflect on what lessons we learned and new goals that we want to set for 2022. So to bring some type of structure to today's episode, we really categorized it in the main aspects that we think of our personal lives and art business goals. So what art business goals do we want? What artwork making goals do we want to have? Community goals and personal. So those are the four categories we are going to be going over today. So Adriana, why don't you get us started? What were some art business wins that you had in this past year, lessons learned, and how are you going to use that for setting your 2022 goals?
Whew. So 2021, which, anyway, still crazy, not as bad as 2020, but still, despite the challenges, a big win that I had was being able to more than double my sales from the previous year. So part of it had to do with investing and educating myself with books, with workshops, sharpening my skills about story-based selling, as well as having my art improve too, as that journey, as that journey progresses, if you will. So it was a great combination of things that led to a better financial result, if you will. So for 2022, there's a lot of goals on the table, of course, but as it relates to my art business, my goal is actually to continue sharpening my selling skills so that I can, or in a better way, let's just rephrase it a little bit, basically sharpen my skills in how to tell my story and the story behind my art so that more people may connect with it, resonate with it, let it bring them, happiness and peace and all the things, which in turn should lead to sales. So, right. Long story short, that's basically the big goal for 2022 for my art business. How about you?
That's a really good one, especially when it comes to like marketing your artwork. It's all about that storytelling, and inevitably by having people more invested in your creative journey and your stories, they're going to become more invested in your creative output too. So that is a really, really good goal. But similarly for me, you mentioned the finances of the business, which I think that's a huge focus when you're kind of separating the art making process with the art business process. The art business, it's all about finances and marketing. So that was a huge win for me this year. I dove really into the numbers of my business, setting short-term and long-term goals, which was very, very terrifying, but also super, super empowering. It's better to have the scared aspect of knowing the numbers than the scared ignorance of hoping for the best. So I was accepted into a business program for small business entrepreneurs called Launch Raleigh, which is a 10-week business program, which was so amazing, but it was definitely revealing of, yes, I have a lot of things covered with my business, but there's also a lot of places I can improve on. So I think that was a huge lesson that I learned over the past year, and really just needing to take things one thing at a time when it comes to the business practices. Not having to go a million miles an hour, just, okay, what's my priority this week? What's my priority this month? And slowly and steadily building it up and having the patience to do so. So in the new year, I definitely want to focus more on the multiple income streams that we talk a lot about on this podcast and in our Level Up Artist community, and think about how can I scale those aspects of my business in 2022. It's kind of like 2020 was my year of burning everything down and starting from a foundation. 2021 was the year that I kind of put those pillars in place of various income streams from a business standpoint. And then I'm manifesting and projecting the goal of 2022 of how do I scale those and really having the scalability to level up my art business for 2022,
Which
which
is what we all want to do, really.
exactly. So, in addition to the art business side of things, how about the art making part, Adriana? I know they're obviously inevitably intertwined when you're running a art creative business. The artwork is part of the business. But from the art making standpoint, what are your goals for the new year? And what have you learned in the past year?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the past year, a 2021 win was uh actually that was a goal I set in 2020, was to be able to create a body of work that had at least 20 pieces.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give myself about 6 months to do this, where they're all cohesive, they're all part of the same story. Just kind of, flushing out some memories and things like that. And surpassed all expectations, because by January 2021, I had already made more than 31 pieces and still counting. They're still coming out throughout the year, somewhere between 60 and 100. Who knows? There's a lot of them. So so I was like, okay, I mean, that's a lesson for me in the sense of it helps having a defined idea on what we're trying to say with the art. And then with consistent practice, the rest of it just flows. So 2020, I was like, I don't know that I can make something that big, especially with some of the pieces being on the larger side. 2021, I learned, oh yeah, I can. Like 20 pieces is not a problem. Apparently 50 pieces is not a problem either. So that was good.
Clearly, you hit your stride with finding a style that you resonate with, because that's another conversation we have a lot of, like, how do I find my distinguished style? And
it's like you find your jam, right?
Right.
And then you can't stop.
Right. If you have 60 of similar style and you're still going strong and excited about it, that's a very good sign.
Yeah, it definitely is. And when you're like, ooh, how can I vary this up a little bit, but it's still part of the larger conversation, and that excitement keeps growing. So that's something I definitely learned throughout the year. Perhaps the other lesson in it is the goal was not big enough, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It seemed impossible at the time, but once I reached it, I was like, wait, that's it. I need
Isn't
to.
that funny? I feel like that's one thing that you and I are both very guilty of, because we get very excited by setting what feel like super intimidating large goals, but then that
just
feeling of like outrunning your goals, which was a concept like I feel like was never really talked about, that I haven't heard anywhere else. But like, what happens once you outrun your goals for the year or for the 6 months or the month? And you're like, oh, that was my 2021 year goal. Now it's February and I'm already done.
Yep.
Okay, back to the drawing board. Time to set some new goals.
Well, and that's why I think too, it's important as small business owners, which is what we do on top of, being professional artists. You have to reevaluate your goals every 3 to 6 months at the very least, and say, where am I in relation to where this goal is, and how do I want to improve upon it? So I will say, in my case,
still in line with where you want to go long term, because maybe there's an opportunity or a shift in your business where you say, you know what, this is not still aligned with the vision that I had. I thought it was, but maybe it's different than what you thought.
Yeah, and looking into the new year, as part of reevaluating the goals and, trying to figure out for 2022, honestly, one of my goals, and it's one that a lot of creatives have, is to go bigger. So moving farther away, or not farther away, I'm still going to make small stuff. I always want to have smaller things that are affordable for, people in all kinds of different social economic situations, of course. But I do want to go bigger, and little by little, out of this year, besides hitting the 20 early on, it was like, can I express these things in a larger format? And I kept going bigger and bigger. I think I peaked out at about 36 by 36 or 30 by 40, around that
Okay.
size.
So what's big
However,
now? What's that goal of yours? Put numbers to it.
oh, I will. I will. I'm gonna call myself out on this.
Oh man.
So something I did this year, a few months back, and even through Art of the Carolinas event that we both participated in recently, which is an art supplies trade show. Oh my
Oh my
goodness, it was
goodness.
amazing.
So much
Um,
fun.
in the last 4 months or so, I have heavily invested, so to speak, in larger canvases. So we're talking 4 foot by 4 foot, 4 foot by 6 foot, 5 foot by six
Yes.
foot, 3 foot by 6 foot. Like, I mean,
So
these
literally
are
life
some,
size,
yeah, these are, yeah, like I have
taller than you
a,
canvases.
yeah, that's exactly it. I have a picture of one of them, or a video of one of them, on Instagram, and I'm literally standing next to it and I'm raising my arm and it's
Oh my
still bigger than
goodness.
me. I'm like,
Stop.
yeah, that's what I want. I want full body movement going on with this
Yes.
thing. I mean, it's a completely different dynamic. I'm
That's
like,
gonna be a workout.
it is, and I've been investing in bigger tools. So ridiculous 8-inch brushes, big, like,
Yes.
little window squeegee, literally window squeegees, like just these bigger tools and bigger things of paint, like just prepping myself, preparing myself, just stocking up. But my big 2022 goal is to go huge. And
Yeah,
if I
that
can
is
at
so
least
exciting.
have one jumbo painting a month, I will be happy. I will be happy. One a month. That's
Heck
12 a year.
yeah. You
Possible?
got it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have the canvases. Now it's just time to, well, put in the work.
You know.
you know.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome, especially when thinking about, which we weren't really going to cover, but the idea of, okay, if you're setting New Year's goals now with a week or two or three left in the year, what can you do to set yourself up for success starting right in January? And it
Yep.
sounds like that's something that you've known that this was going to be, you've had that itch that's getting more and more tempting. So you knew that's direction you were going in. So slowly investing in those application materials, investing in canvases. So that way it's not like you have this huge financial investment right on January 1 to get
Yeah,
started.
no,
You've been
not worth
slowly
it.
piecing that together because I think that's a huge hurdle that a lot of people come to, and understanding that you need that warm up time, you need that prep time for a lot of those goals,
Yeah.
which I feel like is very similar to what my goals for art making are in the new year, is being more disciplined with my art making process. This year, I was very, very fortunate in getting the unexpected opportunity to move into a larger art space studio, which I absolutely love. But having that, I now have more space to store paintings. And as I started the beginning of 2021 with my first ever solo exhibition, which was absolutely amazing. And speaking of outrunning goals, I feel like I've just been outrunning them since then, like trying to play catch up almost, and knowing that art inventory is an issue for me in terms of having opportunities, which, knock on wood, I am very, very thankful for, of having opportunities to be displayed in group exhibitions or more solo exhibitions, and having like just enough artwork to make it happen, where realizing the importance of where I am now creatively, of I kind of need to have a solo exhibition on hand for if or when that opportunity comes up, but also just making new artwork for my collectors, for myself, and constantly being disciplined in that art making process. Because after all, this is an art making business. And I feel like one of my strengths is being disciplined in obviously having a day job and needing to be good with my time. But one thing that I need to be better about is just making more artwork and having almost like quantifiable, measurable aspects of that for my business, whether it's number of hours a week, whether it's number of paintings a month, trying to figure out what that scalable accountability I'm going to keep for myself. Okay, like what am I going to track? Which I know we talk about in our tracking episode of the podcast.
Yep.
But just to keep these opportunities coming and really diving in even harder into my art making process, because I feel like, especially as career minded artists, when you think of the art business side and marketing yourself and filling out applications, sometimes that can be overpowering of your art making process and really suck up all your time to where you're
Yep.
like, I just want to paint. I just want to be in my studio. And you have to realize how to balance that, which I'm not necessarily good at. So
Part of the 2022 goal, huh?
yeah. So it's almost like you last year setting the goal to, okay, do like 20 paintings in a cohesive series by a certain date. I feel like that's very similar what my goal needs to be. I don't know if that's a set series, if it's multiple sizes, still working that out, but something in terms of a disciplined art making process, because once you get in the flow of that, like that's such the rewarding part.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I think something that ties in both of our goals too, and kind of something that may help other creatives hearing this, is that idea of having, like, preparing yourself not just in terms of the supplies, have them at hand. So when
Yeah.
that inspiration strikes, you can, hit the iron while it's hot, as they say, strike the
Yeah.
iron while it's hot. But also the mental preparation of it.
Right.
After all, inspiration doesn't just arrive on demand, right? It feels like it's an oven, not a microwave. I don't know. Well, it's true. We have to
Gotta
warm
warm
up.
up. It's not just instant.
It's
Yeah.
not it's not Insta creations.
Right.
Don't believe what the TikToks and the Instagrams tell you. It doesn't work that way. So I do want to add to that yeah, I feel like it's really important, as creatives start setting their goals for next year, to take the time to figure out what they want those numbers to look like.
Right.
But also, it's not just about production. We're not factories.
Right.
It's also about what feels right for you and having the right tools for the job, right? Having the materials for it doesn't mean go on a art haul, shopping spree. That's not what we're talking about. But definitely having the necessary tools and then preparing yourself and then having the discipline, which is a common thread that you and I talk
Yeah.
about, having the discipline to put in the work and just
Yeah.
setting the time aside and doing it anyways.
Right.
Life will
Scheduling
always get
other
in the way.
priorities.
Yeah, life
Yeah.
will always get in the way. The business side will always get in the way, but having that discipline to say, okay, from X time to X time, we're gonna work.
Right. And understanding that it might feel like sacrifices in the beginning, where like there will have to be, okay, social things where it's like, all right, no,
Yeah,
Sunday from this time to this time, I don't
it's
care
painting
what
time.
plans, like that's painting time. Um, so
It's
I'm
hard.
excited for that. I'm
Yeah.
really intimidated, but I'm super excited.
Well,
Especially with my beautiful new studio. Like I just gotta spend more time in there.
it needs more paint on that floor, so that
I know. It's too clean in there. I need to mess it up.
it's too clean.
Yeah. I think that's my thing, which
I
if
know.
anyone that listens to the podcast follows me on Instagram, you'll see like the beautiful pegboard organization and shelves, which like that's how I like my studio. And
Yep,
it always gives me a little bit of anxiety when it's like full production mode, but like that's a good sign,
it
because
is.
obviously you don't want like a picture perfect Instagrammable quote
No,
unquote like art studio all the time, because then it
can't
means
work
you're
on
not
that.
making artwork. So
Yeah.
the creative process is messy. So
Yeah, or it can be. It can be. There's some
it
artists that
can be.
are beyond neat, and it's like hats off, y'all.
Yeah.
Mine, everything ends up around the floor until while in the creation, and the easels and the walls everywhere. Every available surface
Yep.
is game, and then everything gets put up when people come in. So, um, speaking of people, community. Let's talk about community
Yeah.
goals.
Community goals.
Yeah, absolutely. So for 2021, this was a win. This was a goal I set up in 2020, and in 2021 it did come true. I was trying to figure out various ways to give back, back to the community, not just artists but also the community at large. So for that, I got to lead and participate community canvas project, which wasn't just in the studio. It actually was iterated in other locations as well. So
So
people of all ages
exciting.
got to paint for free and participate. So that's fun. Got to volunteer and I still am volunteering with a local arts organization in our area that acts as a resource hub. For all types of artists. I wanted to amp up proposals for participatory projects, some of them in a corporate environment. So all of these things actually did take place. So that was amazing. Um, I think the biggest lesson in this is recognizing that though art can be solitary, it doesn't have to mean we remain isolated. Yes, COVID isolated. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying we go hug people without our mask on. No, please. Not until it's okay. Not until it's okay
Yeah.
again. But it's that feeling of, it's good to know that we can make an impact on someone else's life
Yeah,
when we
definitely.
generously share what we have and what we know. So it's not just, oh, this is all about hashtag artist life and I am, the tortured, lonely solo artist, all that. No, that's not worth
Right.
it, honestly. I'm like,
No.
if you share it with others and it brightens their life, there are people that are in other kinds of jobs that really want to pursue a creative life, and you share what
Yes.
you know, and they get to say, wait, you can actually make a career out of this? You can actually get paid for this?
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
crazy.
you can. um, or I haven't painted since I was in middle school. And it's like, well, here's a brush and some paint. It's free. Go for it. The
Yeah.
painting will be sold off and money goes to charity. Just go for it. It costs you nothing. And
Yeah.
seeing that spark come up, yeah, that honestly has been a big lesson. So for me, 2022 is about amplifying this even more.
Yeah.
I want to have a focus on elevating the voices of underrepresented artists. So this is a biggie for me. I'm still working what that will look like in the future. So more to come. But I definitely want to find a way to use my skills, right, in business, in art, in
Mhm.
marketing, and technology to be able to leverage those to help others as well. So more to come. How about
Yeah.
you, Jackie?
No, that's amazing. And I absolutely love that both with your community outreach programs, but even having community members come to our studios or even what we post on social media. That's one of the really, really rewarding things, whether it's an emerging artist who can relate to the things that we're sharing. Or I honestly love hearing the stories of people saying, like, oh, well, like I was in the theater program in middle school and I absolutely love doing like the set design. And like just by us living our passionate lives with our creative business, it then inspires people to even think about maybe like, why haven't I painted anything in 20
Mhm.
years? Like, what happened to my love of photography? Even if it doesn't turn into a full on business, just like igniting that inspiration and like remembering those good times, the creative energy that they once had
Yeah.
is super, super rewarding. And I think, especially through a huge win that we both had this year, was launching this podcast. That
Yes, it
alone has
was.
been so, so amazing. We kind of set the idea, I think we started thinking about it in like November, December. And the fact that it went from this is a wild idea, what do you think, to fully testing it out, troubleshooting and launching it, and now over 30 episodes as of the time of this recording with no end in sight really is such a huge accomplishment when thinking about to where we were this time last year. I think our 2020 selves would be very proud of where we are right now because really like you have no idea like what you can bring to life because like if you have an idea it is possible and everyone has something valuable that they can share. So it's just been super rewarding to make these episodes, obviously have set time that we get to hang out and talk every week,
Yeah.
but then also like hearing from our listeners, having people send us DMs on Instagram talking about the episode they just listened to or how they can relate to certain struggles that we're having and that they find peace in their creative process or insight by what we're sharing and what we've learned. That is the most amazing aspect, I feel like, of what we do with the community, reaching people that we haven't even met before, which is so much fun. So looking into 2022, I'm excited to just keep going with the podcast. Obviously, wanting as much listener feedback as possible. So if you guys want to
Always.
DM us on Instagram or send us an email, we absolutely love hearing from you guys, certain topics that you think would be beneficial, and even maybe starting in-person podcast events or workshops.
Yes.
I think that was something that we've both been toying with the idea of growing this virtual community, but where we are physically, can we bring this to in-person classes or live Zoom type workshop things? So definitely have a lot of ideas in the works for 2022.
Yeah, we do. And those also will include collaborations, which I am
Yeah.
beyond excited about. We've been talking to other artists, gallery owners, all kinds of industry professionals, and just tapping on them on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, we're still working it out, but once we have the framework ironed out, would you be willing to jump on, an episode
Right.
with us?" And a lot of people have been saying yes, so more to come on all
Yes.
that.
So excited.
But I know we're so excited. I mean, part of our whole thing is sharing forward the knowledge that we have accumulated ourselves through our experiences, but
Yeah.
also the wisdom of other artists that have, come before us or have more experience than we do or different experience than we do. And they're willing to share it too. We just have the platform and framework already set
Right.
up and, they're ready. So more to come on all
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, just really
Yeah.
putting our networks together and the
Yeah.
networks of other artists to build a little art
Help us.
empire of
Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah, and help as many people as we can. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what we do. But
Exactly. But
sorry, go ahead.
in addition to the business and art making and community focused goals for next year, we are obviously, in addition to business owners, just regular people too. So, what are some personal goals that you have for the new year or wins that you've had this past year?
I do not know what this is that you speak of. I am robot.
Error, error. 404 kinetic
Just
sounds.
kidding. Also to, demystify that myth that's come up from time to time. I do not live in the studio, okay? I only go there
I still
6
don't believe
times a
you.
week. So I do
I think that's
have
one thing that we
a
get all the
personal
time.
life.
Yeah, I think that's
Bum,
one thing
bum,
that we both get
bum.
all the time is like, you guys are just in the studio all the time.
Do you
You
live
probably
there?
never sleep. Do you do anything besides artwork? And it's
No.
really funny to hear that because if anyone knows either of us in real lives, we have like full on other hobbies, other interests. Like we have full on social lives. But yes, what we share and our business is the art world. So that's what you see on social media. It's such a like a small sliver, maybe slightly bigger sliver of our lives, but we're also people too. So
I know, but that does bring up a good point because for me, one of my goals for 2021, and it's something I found out was happening during 2020, was to do better with my boundaries. So
yeah,
art has become inseparable from my life.
yeah.
Yeah, almost everything I do is art related. Almost. So I started doing better at cutting off the time spent working on the business side so that I could focus on recovering my
Mhm.
energy and keep burnout at bay. So what was happening, to give you a little bit of context, was I left my corporate job at the end of 2019. So early 2020, January 1st, 2020, woohoo, I'm a full-time artist, hashtag
Yeah.
artist life, and then of course COVID hit. But what ended up happening was because a lot of the social things were no longer there, because of course of the pandemic, basically all I had to do was art. I mean, it was
Right.
great in a way, but literally my life became more than ever inseparable from art, and I was doing art every waking moment. So even
Yep.
before going to the studio, I was doing art at home. Before going to the studio, make more art, to come home and make more art. I mean, it
Yep.
was insane. Um, but it also meant that I was working myself to the bone because I had no personal boundaries with
Right.
myself. I still worked when I got home, whether it was the art or even the business side, the admin stuff. Um, so something that I definitely had to put in the time and the discipline for was to say, other than maybe sketching or doing a swatch from time to time, when I'm home, I don't make art. I have
Yeah.
to divide the two so that the art making process itself is 99.9% done in the studio, which requires I drive 25 minutes to half an hour to get to the studio. That's how far I live from it, which already is acting as that separation from my personal life. Go to the
Yeah.
studio, do the art, come back, right? So
Your
trying
daily
to divide
commute.
that. Yeah, I literally have a commute. But that was like a way to help separate it,
Yeah.
and keep it from overdoing it. And that way too, by having that separation, it also makes it easier if one of my old coworkers from my corporate life says, let's go out and have lunch, or I don't know, I want to go camping, with the hubs or whatever.
Right.
Like, it makes it a little bit easier because I can say yes, and then yes, I'm still taking art supplies to camping, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
um,
Art camping retreat.
but absolutely. But it still makes it a little bit easier to say, I can do these other things that are not related to the art business itself. Like, sure, I might sketch on the side, but it's not for selling. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's just fun. It's just almost hobby style at that
Yeah, and
point.
like it's nurturing your creative energy, and
Yeah,
that's a way of replenishing yourself too. It's not
exactly.
like I have to get this done by this time deadline
No,
or pressure. It's truly like when the inspiration strikes, or just as a idle, have a working hand activity, because that's
exactly.
something that you gravitate towards. So like
Yeah,
rewarding
and
yourself with that in your downtime, but not I have to get this blog
exactly.
post up by 1 a.m. and then sleep for 4. Yeah, no.
No, it's good to know. We're not doing heart surgery here, people. So it's our art emergencies are not the same as other types of emergency. So it's
Right.
learning that balance of like, it's okay when the bus leaves the station, look at the time, it's time to leave. I can come back tomorrow, it's time to make that separation. So,
Right.
2022, my goal relates to this is to make my business more efficient, get outside help
Mm,
when needed so I can actually go on vacation and
yeah.
unplug the whole time and not be like, I need to send out a newsletter, I need to do an Instagram post, I need to do this, I need to do that, or I need to crank out these paintings this week. Instead, I can just let go without
Yeah.
letting the business interfere and introduce any stress elements. So that's honestly a huge lesson and something I'm hoping to do better with. So if I'm going into the whole, I have these 500 things to do, well, at what point can I say, all right, hold it right there, don't go over the time? I mean, if
Right.
you move into doing art full time, how about you don't work 80 hours a week, right?
Right.
So if you're gonna make
Learning
that
how to delegate
separation,
too.
yeah, exactly. Then you have to learn to delegate. So as you scale up your business, you level up your business. You can
Mhm.
still focus on the things that you love, but you're not eating into your resting time, into your recovery time, if that makes
Right.
sense.
I think that's super, super big. And that's definitely a huge focus for me into the new year, because just like you were saying, I think that's why we probably get along so well with 2020 and having with the pandemic and shutdown. It basically became that built-in excuse that in the not so healthy way, my mind was like, I mean, now that I
Art,
don't
art,
have
art, art,
my
art.
outgoing social draws, like, because I am a very outgoing social person, now that I don't have any other reason but to work, let's just dive all in. And it was like 24/7 art making, art business, marketing, like going all in. And I absolutely loved every second of it. But then now with this year, with things starting to open back up, obviously from a world standpoint, we still have a lot of hurdles to get over, but things are starting to look a little bit more balanced and open. And social sports leagues are a huge part of my life that start coming back, socializing, meeting new people. And so what does that look like when my life this time last year was literally 100% art? Um, so trying to figure out what that balance looks like was a huge struggle for me this year, but also a huge win. I think for the most part, realizing, okay, I can't 100% go back to the same social level that I did pre-pandemic
Mhm.
because I have an art business now. I really wasn't that intense with the art making process before the pandemic. So I can't expect to be in 4 or 5 different volleyball leagues and still have time to make artwork. However,
Not for
I
a
don't
living
need to,
anyways.
right. If I want to make it a business, I
Yep.
can. So, but I don't have to say no to all of the leagues. So what does that balance look like? And the same thing, socializing or whichever, finding that balance in between. So I think that has been a huge win for me and something I'm going to have to continually be intentional about, and really focusing on those check-ins. Is this
Mhm.
sustainable? And similar to you of, okay, let me get crystal clear on what are my priorities as a business. Is this activity really going to move my business forward? Or is this a shiny object syndrome that I didn't account for, that I'm not like allotting time for, and it just becomes a distraction towards my larger vision? Because I really want to basically dive in with the business so I can start delegating off certain aspects of the business to allow, we are business owners. And I always say, like, don't be a bad boss to yourself. We're
Mm-mm.
not building these art businesses and communities to be stressed out, pulling our hair out all of the time. We're not building this to be like, I've been here for 14 hours and I don't want to be. Like, and thinking about, okay, if what you were telling yourself you have to do was being told to you by a separate person, how would you feel if they were telling you that? No, you have to stay until this is done. I don't care if you're exhausted. I don't care if you haven't eaten in 12 hours. Like, you're here until this painting's done. And I'd be like, okay, see ya, peace out, bye. I'm leaving, you're the worst. Like, stop being so mean. So, like, be nice to yourself is one thing that I've had to learn. Luckily, not on that scale, but having those check-ins. Um, and really embracing the freedoms of being a business owner and all of the amazing aspects that it brings to our personal lives too, including more free time and more painting time. And especially for me, one thing I want to start prioritizing again in 2022, in addition to that intentional art making time, is also like that intentional quiet alone time, which I
Mhm.
love journaling and reading and personal development, versus recently, I think it's been a lot of business personal development rather than like internal introspective work. So those are definitely things I want to start prioritizing again in the new year.
Yeah, so that was a lot, a lot of goals, a lot of lessons that we learned in the last 2.5, 3 years, that we wanted to share with you so that you could also see kind of the steps that we've put in place in order to be able to grow our businesses and pivot as necessary while
Yes.
always keeping eyes on the goal and always trying to keep it fun, obviously art centered, but also sustainable and profitable so that we can make a living out of this, right? So we hope that you enjoyed all this information that we shared with you and that you'll come and check us out at levelupartist.com, which is our artist community website, in which we definitely continue sharing more of this knowledge, the tools, the resources, the skills that we had to research and put into place and test and trial and fail and then
Yes.
succeed in order to be able to grow our businesses. So we hope that you will join us if you're listening to this on real time. Today, December 14th, is the last day to join. All the information, as always, will be in the show notes as well as levelupartist.com. But we really hope that you enjoyed this episode. And that's basically a wrap for today's conversation.
Yep. And like Adriana said, as always, both of our personal blogs will be shared in the show notes, as well as information on the Level Up Artist community and our goals for the upcoming year.
Absolutely. And if you want to stay in touch with us, please reach out to us through social media. I'm at May Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Sanders Studio on all platforms. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.